like a movie. I mean, it's a very dark, messed up movie, but it has really good structure.
Most filmmakers want audiences to feel comfortable in their seats. Darren Aronofsky wants them squirming, questioning, and completely overwhelmed by what they're experiencing.
It was you would have been a bit older than me, which is interesting because I think there is a bit of a generation difference.
For over 2 decades, he's crafted psychological nightmares disguised as entertainment. Ballet dancers losing their minds, wrestlers destroying their bodies, mathematicians chasing impossible theories. Every Aronofsky film feels like stepping inside someone else's breakdown. The camera moves like it's having a panic attack. The editing cuts faster than racing thoughts. Colors drain away or explode without warning. This isn't accidental chaos, it's calculated madness designed to break down barriers between screen and viewer. Before Aronofsky became the master of psychological horror, he was a student studying mathematics at Harvard. But late at night in his dorm room, he discovered films that changed everything he thought movies could accomplish. These weren't just stories on screen, they were experiences that rewired his brain and showed him new possibilities. The movies that shaped Aronofsky didn't teach him how to entertain people. They taught him how to possess them completely. Each film became a lesson in pushing boundaries, breaking rules, and using cinema as a tool for psychological exploration rather than simple storytelling. Here are the 6 films that created one of modern cinema's most uncompromising voices. These movies didn't just influence his style, they formed his entire philosophy about what films should do to audiences who dare to watch them. 6. Sátántangó, 1994. Béla Tarr's 7-hour Hungarian masterpiece Sátántangó completely rewired how young Darren Aronofsky understood the relationship between time and storytelling.
Sheffield! Basszátok meg a nénitéket!
Most film students learn that movies should move quickly to keep audiences engaged. Tarr taught Aronofsky that sometimes the most powerful thing cinema can do is force viewers to experience time the way characters do, slowly and painfully. The film follows a small group of people in a decaying Hungarian village.
It happened 10 years before, right before I shot the movie. And the actor in that was completely different than Brett.
But Tarr stretches every moment until it becomes almost unbearable to watch. Single shots last for minutes without cuts. Characters walk across fields in real time while the camera follows their every step. For Aronofsky, this wasn't boring filmmaking. It was a revolutionary approach to creating psychological states through pure duration. Watching Sátántangó became a test of endurance that changed how Aronofsky thought about repetition and obsession in his own work. The film's hypnotic rhythms and circular structure would later influence how he approached the spiraling madness in films like Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan. He learned that audiences could handle extreme experiences if the filmmaker committed completely to the vision. Tarr showed Aronofsky that cinema could be meditative and punishing at the same time. The Hungarian director proved that patient viewers would follow even the most challenging material if every frame served the larger emotional purpose. This lesson became fundamental to Aronofsky's approach to difficult subjects and uncomfortable viewing experiences. Sátántangó taught him that time itself could become a character in his films, something to be manipulated and weaponized against comfortable viewing habits. 5. Perfect Blue, 1997. Satoshi Kon's animated psychological thriller Perfect Blue shattered Darren Aronofsky's assumptions about what animation could accomplish.
Man, that's like way too expensive.
Like I said, it's from that show they performed in Hiroshima.
As a serious artistic medium. This Japanese masterpiece follows a pop star whose reality begins collapsing as she transitions from innocent performer to serious actress. For Aronofsky, this wasn't just entertainment, it was a masterclass in visual storytelling that would fundamentally change his approach to psychological horror. The film's seamless blend of dreams, memories, and hallucinations created a visual language that Aronofsky had never seen before in live-action cinema. Kon used animation's flexibility to show the inside of a breaking mind, with reality and fantasy flowing together like water. Characters morph into different versions of themselves, mirrors reflect different people, and the audience never knows what's real anymore. What fascinated Aronofsky most was how Khan made the audience experience mental illness rather than simply observe it from the outside. The editing becomes more frantic as the protagonist loses her grip on reality. Colors shift and blend unexpectedly. The camera angles become increasingly disorienting until viewers feel as confused and terrified as the main character herself. Perfect Blue became the direct inspiration for many visual techniques Aronofsky would later use in Black Swan, including mirror imagery, identity confusion, and the gradual breakdown of a performer under pressure. Khan proved that psychological horror could be beautiful and disturbing simultaneously, teaching Aronofsky that audiences could handle extreme discomfort if it served deeper emotional truths. The film showed him that animation could explore adult themes with more visual freedom than any live-action movie, opening new possibilities for representing internal psychological states on screen. 4. Persona, 1996. Ingmar Bergman's Persona became Darren Aronofsky's graduate course in psychological filmmaking and the complete breakdown of identity between performer and audience.
Doktorn ville tala med mig.
Har syster Alma varit inne hos fru Fågler?
This Swedish psychological drama about an actress who stopped speaking and her obsessive nurse taught Aronofsky that cinema could be therapy, torture, and artistic statement all rolled into one disturbing experience. Bergman's use of extreme close-ups and mirror imagery showed Aronofsky new ways to visualize the human psyche cracking under pressure. The film's famous sequence where two faces blend together became a direct influence on similar shots in Black Swan, where Natalie Portman's character begins losing herself in her role. Bergman proved that faces could become landscapes of psychological terror. What amazed Aronofsky most was how Bergman made the filmmaking process itself part of the story's meaning. The movie breaks apart halfway through, showing the actual film burning and melting on screen. This meta-narrative approach taught Aronofsky that he could acknowledge the artificial nature of cinema while still creating powerful emotional experiences for viewers. Persona's exploration of silence as both weapon and refuge influenced how Aronofsky would later use sound design in his own films. Bergman showed that what characters don't say can be more powerful than their words. The absence of dialogue becomes its own form of communication, something Aronofsky would remember when crafting his own studies of artistic obsession. The film taught him that identity itself could be the subject of cinema, not just the vehicle for telling other stories. Bergman proved that movies could ask fundamental questions about who we really are beneath our performances. 3. Apocalypse. Now 1979, Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse now taught Darren Aronofsky that the most powerful films come from directors who risk everything.
Nothing is so terrible as a pretentious movie. I mean, a movie that aspires for something really terrific and doesn't pull it off is shit.
Including their own sanity to capture impossible visions on screen.
So I own Apocalypse Now for one simple reason: nobody else wanted it. So I undertook making Apocalypse.
This Vietnam War epic follows a soldier's journey into the heart of darkness. But for Aronofsky, the real story was Coppola's own descent into filmmaking madness during the chaotic production process. The film's legendary troubled production became as important to Aronofsky as the finished movie itself. Coppola mortgaged his house, battled studio executives, and nearly destroyed his career to complete his vision. This taught Aronofsky that great art requires dangerous levels of personal commitment, something he would later apply to his own intensive filmmaking process and actor preparation methods. What struck Aronofsky most was how Coppola used the jungle setting as both literal location and psychological landscape, representing the characters' mental states. The deeper into Vietnam the soldiers travel, the further they drift from reality and civilization. This connection between external environment and internal psychology became fundamental to how Aronofsky would later design his own films. Apocalypse Now proved that epic scope and intimate character study could work together perfectly when filtered through one uncompromising artistic vision. Coppola showed that audiences would follow even the most challenging material if the director committed completely to the emotional journey. The film's famous line about horror having a face became Aronofsky's philosophy about confronting uncomfortable truths through cinema. Coppola taught him that filmmaking itself could become a form of madness, and that sometimes the best art comes from directors willing to lose themselves completely in their work. 2. 2001. A Space Odyssey, 1968. Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey became Darren Aronofsky's masterclass in using cinema to explore humanity's biggest questions about existence, death, and what lies beyond our understanding.
Destination, your nationality, and your full name.
Moon, American.
This science fiction epic showed Aronofsky that movies could be philosophical experiences rather than simple entertainment, challenging audiences to think deeply about their place in the universe. Kubrick's obsessive attention to visual detail and scientific accuracy taught Aronofsky that every frame should serve multiple purposes simultaneously. The famous rotating space station sequence influenced how Aronofsky would later use circular imagery and repetitive motion in his own films. Kubrick proved that technical precision could enhance emotional impact rather than diminish it. What fascinated Aronofsky most was how Kubrick balanced intimate human drama with cosmic-scale themes about evolution and transcendence. The film jumps millions of years in a single cut, yet every moment feels personal and immediate. This approach would later influence The Fountain, where Aronofsky attempted his own meditation on death, rebirth, and humanity's search for eternal life. The film's final sequence, where the astronaut ages and dies before being reborn as a cosmic being, showed Aronofsky that cinema could represent spiritual transformation in ways that literature and other art forms simply cannot match. Kubrick used visual effects and editing to create genuine transcendent experiences for audiences willing to surrender to the journey. 2001 taught Aronofsky that the best science fiction films use futuristic settings to examine timeless human concerns about mortality, consciousness, and our desperate need to find meaning in an apparently meaningless universe. 1. Eraserhead. 1977. David Lynch's Eraserhead became Darren Aronofsky's North Star for independent filmmaking and proof that the most personal visions could create the most universal emotional responses. This black and white nightmare about fatherhood, industrial decay, and existential terror showed Aronofsky that movies could function like dreams, operating on pure emotion and atmosphere rather than traditional narrative logic.
Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
Lynch's approach to sound design completely revolutionized how Aronofsky thought about creating psychological states through audio. Eraserhead's constant industrial humming and mechanical noises taught him that what audiences hear can be more important than what they see. This lesson would become fundamental to films like Requiem for a Dream, where sound itself becomes a character expressing the protagonist's internal chaos. Eraserhead showed Aronofsky that audiences could handle extreme discomfort in surreal imagery if the filmmaker committed completely to their artistic vision. Lynch never explained what his film meant, trusting viewers to find their own emotional connections to the material. This taught Aronofsky that the best films leave room for personal interpretation while still delivering powerful shared experiences. These 6 films taught Aronofsky that cinema should challenge, disturb, and transform rather than simply entertain audiences seeking comfort. Each movie proved that the most powerful art comes from artists willing to risk everything for their vision. Subscribe for more insights into filmmaking's most uncompromising voices.